All right, good evening, everyone. It's 7 o'clock here in cold and windy Woodstock, Maine. I'm your host for tonight's webinar, Richard Byrne from freetechforteachers.com and Mind Rocket Media Group. A couple of things this evening before we get into the meat and potatoes of tonight's webinar, just some housekeeping things. If you have never used GoToTraining before, there's a couple of little things you should know about it. Uh, in GoToTraining, there is a chat feature in the bottom right corner of your panel, probably in the bottom right corner. If you're on the mobile app, it may appear in a different place, but it should be in the client that launched on your desktop if you're on your laptop. Well, feel free to use that chat throughout the night to ask questions. You can send a question to the entire audience. You can send it directly to me. You can also send it to Melissa Kaiser. You'll see Melissa Kaiser's name in the list tonight. She is the community manager for Bloomz and also a teacher herself, and she's going to be joining us to answer some questions and show some of the ways that she's been using Bloomz in her classroom with her students' parents. A couple other just housekeeping things. I have muted everyone's microphones remotely. That way we don't get any accidental broadcast of kids running around in the background or dogs barking or things to that effect. Speaking of dogs, I have one who occasionally will make a noise on a webinar. So if you hear a dog barking, that's my dog Max. And the last housekeeping thing, this webinar is being recorded. So if something goes by too quickly for you, I'll certainly stop and we can go over it again, but the recording will be available to anyone who has signed up for the webinar. So if you're watching this webinar later, if you signed up and you're just now watching the webinar the next day or a couple days later, you can certainly back it up anytime and watch as many times as you want once you have that recording. So I think that's it for the housekeeping things. That is record time for me and housekeeping, only 2 minutes. And one last thing before we get started. If you have used Bloomz before or you've never used Bloomz before, say so in the chat room. Just let us know you're here and say, yes, I've used Bloomz, or no, I've never used Bloomz, which you can find, as you can see, at bloomz.net. All right, cool. Not yet. I see a bunch of not yets. That's awesome. That's great. We're gonna learn. We're gonna learn today, and we see Diane just started using it. So, great, Diane. I hope it's going well for you. Uh, and I see a couple of familiar names here in the list of attendees. So that's nice. Thanks for coming back to do another webinar with me. Always a compliment to get a repeat customer as it were. Right. So a couple of things about Bloomz.net from my perspective. Number one, it's a very robust tool, which means that it takes a little bit of time to kind of understand all of the things that it can do. And I will fully admit that it took me quite a bit of time to really dive into everything that could be done with Bloomz. And so we'll try to uncover as many of those things tonight as possible. And that's actually why Melissa's here to kind of help us with that as well. So tonight's session is really 5 good ways to use Bloomz to streamline communication with parents. But before we get into that, just a couple of quick points about why not just use email. I get this question a lot, whether it's with Bloomz or other services like it. Folks will say to me, Richard, why wouldn't I just use an email address? Why can't I just send out an email list? And a couple of things come to mind. Number one is the speed and immediacy factor. When you get a notification on your phone, whether that's a text alert or an alert from an app that you have installed, and Bloomz is available as an Android app and as an iOS app, so you can use it on your iPhone or your Android phone, and parents can use it obviously on those devices. It's really hard to resist looking at what that notification is. When I have my cell phone near me and I turned it off for the webinar tonight, otherwise I could probably get very distracted by a push alert or a text message, an SMS message that appears on my phone. It's very hard to ignore those things. Whereas email, gosh, we probably all have emails that are many weeks old in our inboxes that we just kind of ignore. The other thing about using email is that it gets filtered by a lot of people, and gets filtered by a lot of businesses. You have a student's parent who works at a business that has a very strict filtering. That message may not get through. An attachment may not get through on a corporate filter. Likewise, your school email might have a limitation on how big of an attachment you can send out, or your school's filter might be blocking some parents' emails as they're coming back. I have personally experienced that many times over the years, where a parent has emailed me from his or her corporate email address, their employer's email address, and I just never got it, and I never even knew they were trying to email me because it was filtered out by our school. And likewise, I probably had messages going to parents that were getting filtered out by their school, by their filters. So those are two reasons why using a system like Bloomz is a little bit better than just using email or relying on email. And the third part is the scheduling. Now, there are scripts and there are third-party tools you can use to schedule your emails, but I've generally found that with those kinds of scheduling tools and email that most teachers don't really utilize them. They tend to take a lot of time to set up, and a lot of them have not been as reliable as I've hoped. And I've tried a lot over the years of scheduling emails, whereas a system like Bloomz makes it really easy just to pick a date and time and send out your message. So then we get to the question of why not just use SMS or text messaging, and a few points here to think about. The limitation of how big a message you can send in terms of the number of characters, but also in terms of attachments. If you need to send an attachment, a lot of carriers will put limitations on that. Some parents, in this day and age, we still have some parents who don't have unlimited text messaging plans, or we definitely have students who don't have unlimited text messaging plans, so we have a little bit of a cost there. And we also have some concerns around privacy when we start to open up our phone numbers as parents to the school, and likewise, especially when we start to talk about putting students into an SMS text messaging system. So Bloomz kind of resolves some of those problems for us. It resolves the speed and immediacy, because we have the mobile app notification, that push alert or that text alert, if you will. You know, we get past a lot of the filtering, we get past a lot of the scheduling, we get past a lot of the message size limitations, as well as our cost and privacy concerns. So what we're going to look at tonight are these 5 ways to really utilize the great features of Bloomz. And I'm going to walk you through tonight the setup, and Melissa's going to join in on this as well. I'm going to have Melissa share her screen a couple of times here if we need to. We're going to talk about managing communication with multiple groups of people, posting assignments and reminders, how to do that, how to make them public versus private, how to keep in touch with parents who need a little bit more interaction with you than others. We've all had that. We've all had the parent who wants a lot of interaction, and then we've had that parent who didn't want quite so much interaction. We'll look at distributing files and how we can streamline that process and streamline our conference scheduling. You know, I think a lot of us are doing parent-teacher conferences right about now. If you're doing parent-teacher conferences between now and Thanksgiving, American Thanksgiving, you know, you might want to take advantage of this feature here of conference scheduling. And finally, particularly at the elementary school level, where we still have a lot of classroom volunteers. We don't get this so much at the high school level for a lot of reasons, but the elementary school level, we see a lot of classroom volunteers, parents who want to get involved, PTAs, and we can look at the ways that we can manage and organize those volunteers and groups of volunteers. Now, just a little background on me. I come at everything with a middle school and high school perspective. Melissa is elementary school level, so you know, if you have more of an elementary school question, we'll cue in Melissa, and if you have more of a high school, middle school question, we'll take a look look at mine. So let me bring up Bloomz here one more time. Now, I'm already signed into my account in another screen, but if you've never taken a look at the Bloomz homepage before, you'll see that there are, like I said, the iOS app and an Android app. You can also use it just on your desktop. Now, because we're on a webinar tonight, it's very difficult for me to mirror my phone to the computer and not lose the connection, because it just is very bandwidth intensive. So we'll be looking at the desktop version, but the desktop version and the mobile version function identically. Just on the webinar tonight, we'll see the desktop version. The desktop version is just a bigger screen. That's all there is to it, really. So let's go ahead and we can join Bloomz as a teacher here. Now you'll see here, if we're the teacher, we'll be given a code that we can distribute to people who we want to have join our group, or you can sign up manually here as the teacher. Let's go ahead and sign myself up. I'm going to use a new email account. I'm going to choose English for tonight's session, and I'm going to use one of my many email addresses to sign up right now. And we'll choose a password for myself. And so we're going to go ahead here and sign in. Now you can see we're going to have a tutorial here that will walk us right through the process of downloading the app, verifying our email addresses, taking the rest of the tour, creating a class, and inviting parents. For the sake of brevity tonight, I'm not going to walk you through all of these steps, and we're going to skip right into my existing account, where I'm going to create a new class right now. So you can see I'm here on my home page. There's a demonstration class that you can use if you like, or you can create a brand new class. I'm going to create a new class here as the teacher. And I can pick my school. Which is right there. I give now if your school does not exist in the database, you can add it manually by entering in the relevant information about your school's name and address. And I've previously done that. And I'm going to just create this class, and I'm going to call this class my World History class. And I'm going to allow parent-to-parent communication in this case. Now this will be a feature that I think you'll find more utility in at the elementary school level than at the high school or middle school level. The elementary school level, we tend to see more parents communicating with each other, organizing events, organizing carpooling, and that sort of thing. So in the elementary school level, we might say we're going to allow parent-to-parent communication. I'm going to ask Melissa right now if she can join in and say, Melissa, do you currently use the parent-to-parent communications?
Hi guys, I do use it in my class. Very rarely do parents actually communicate back and forth. They mostly use the messaging feature to contact me, the teacher, and it works the same as like a texting feature does. So you can talk back and forth with the parent without having to give out any of your contact information. But if parents have used it to, like you said, schedule a pickup if they needed to, if they weren't going to be there or something came up. They've used it to switch volunteer times if all of a sudden something came up and they weren't going to be able to make a time for schedule. They could send out a message to the class that says, hey, I can't make it, can anybody cover my time?
Cool, that's great. And I assume you're also using the groups feature. We're going to look at the groups in a bit, but is that correct? You're using the groups as well?
Yeah, actually, we use the group feature on the school level for a staff group, and then we also have a kindergartners group as well.
Awesome, awesome. All right, thanks. And we'll turn you back on in just a second here. We'll set up the rest of this class. Uh, so this is kind of like Facebook. If you're a Facebook user, and 900 million of us are, so you probably are too, we're going to go ahead and just customize our page here, make it look a little more attractive. Now, I've previously uploaded some media into my account, and I can pick from there, or I can go ahead and I can upload a new photo altogether. Now I'll go to my desktop here where I have a whole bunch of pictures, and I'm just going to add something fun to my background. Maybe I'll put in that picture of a buffalo. And this is just like a Facebook header. And I'll do the same thing here. I'll upload a picture to use as an icon for the class. Now in my case, I'm going to use a picture of me, which I think makes a lot of sense for most of us. Put in a picture of ourselves so that a parent who's brand new to Bloomz knows, oh yeah, I'm definitely in the right place, that sort of thing. So I'll go ahead and put in a picture of myself. Again, just like in Facebook, you could go in and you could put in just about anything you wanted to use as your icon there. So while we wait for that picture to upload, let's take a look at some of the many things we can do here in this stream of our class. So this is my world history class. Now, if I go to my members tab, I don't have any members yet. So we need to invite some parents. And we can do this in a bunch of ways. As you can see, we can use a class code. So I'm going to actually put this class code here into the chat room. And if anybody wanted to join my class right now as a parent, you can certainly go to bloomz.net and you can join and use my class code, and you can join the room here. Now I can also invite parents by putting in a list of email addresses, and I happen to have a massive email addresses here. That's everybody who registered for the webinar tonight. And I can send that out, and I'll say this is the demonstration group. We'll go ahead and send all of those out. And so if you're live in the webinar right now, you should get an email message very shortly inviting you to join this. Now, Melissa, which method have you found to be better with your students' parents?
Yeah, here's what I would suggest, my personal opinion on inviting. I always tell teachers to invite through the email, because if you've invited the parents through the email form, they're automatically attached to your classroom without them having to go in and join on their own. So even if you have some reluctant parents that don't want to use Bloomz, they don't want to create an account, we all have some of those parents, they don't have to. As long as they've been invited by an email address, they'll still receive all of your communication in an email form. So that way you're not having to manage who's signed up, who hasn't, and you're still kind of managing two separate parent communication channels. If you invite email, you don't have to worry. No matter what you put into Bloomz, will reach all of your parents no matter what.
That's great. That's fantastic. I didn't even think of it that way. I was always thinking that the class code would be great for like a parent-teacher conference night, if you're, or a an open house night the first week of school, something like that, to post that.
Yeah, and it is easy that way. It's easy to write it up on the board and say, hey, join the class. But then you're still going to have to manage to make sure that people are signing up, because if they don't, then they're not going to receive the information.
Right. Good point. Good point. And we also have here, if you notice when we were looking at this class code, we have instructions here in Spanish and English that we can print out as PDFs and distribute as well. Now, for folks who are, and now we see I have 2 people who have just joined my class. That's great. For everyone else, if you, just to show you what that email looks like here, we'll open up my inbox. And we'll see the message here from the instructor. The account I'm using is actually my dog Max's account, so I can send myself emails. And you can see here, all right, go ahead and join. And join the class that way. So now you get a sense of which way that the 2 different ways that Melissa and I have now mentioned on how to join this class. And we have one more person who has just joined. Now you may notice that on my home button, I'm getting these little pop-up alerts anytime I post something new or something new is happening in all of my classes. I'll get that little alert. Let's go back to the world history class we're using here as a demonstration. And you can see here we have Carol and Diane and Laura and Teresa and Karima. We're all in the class. This is great. I'm going to go back to my feed, and we can see everything in here. Let's take a look at posting our first message here for the entire group. Now, if you're looking at here, we're talking about managing communication with multiple groups. You notice I have world history and history. It's very easy to switch between the 2. Send something to my history class or to my world history class. Let's go ahead and create something new. Let's create our first post. I'm going to say welcome to class. And just say, thank you for joining. We will be using this space throughout the year to keep you informed of important events and assignments in the class, in your student's class. Now we can go ahead and say we want to add a quick file. Perhaps we have a little handout of classroom expectations. We could go ahead and attach that. Or in my case here, I might just attach a quick, little picture, class icon. Now you can attach any file that you would want to attach. You can attach here, including, as you can see, a photo. Now we can schedule this for the future, and this is the piece of Bloomz that I really like, as opposed to trying to use email for something like this. Maybe I don't need to send this message out until tomorrow morning as a reminder. I could go in and just say, well, we're going to schedule this for tomorrow morning at 7:30 a.m. as opposed to publishing it now. We'll go ahead and schedule this one to appear at 7:30 p.m. tonight. And so now that's scheduled. It's going to pop up here in about 7 minutes. Now we can also do this. We can also create an announcement. Okay? And an announcement is something that's going to be pinned. If you've ever managed a Facebook page or your Twitter page, for example, you can pin things to the top so that people always see them. Kind of like in a blog, you can pin blog posts to the top so that people always see them. Okay? We're going to show this message for the next week. Okay? Field trip next Friday. Please remember that next week we are going on a field trip to the zoo. Please send your child with his or her permission slip and lunch. And again, we could attach a permission slip. If we had one here, we could certainly attach that. And I have plenty of documents here for the sake of documents. we'll go ahead and just put in a filler document. That's just going to be a filler document there. If you want to open it, you can. It's just it's nothing significant. But you can see that's an announcement that's now pinned to the top. Anytime someone comes into Bloomz, anytime that a member of this class comes into Bloomz, we can see that. And I'm going to ask Melissa to weigh in on how you're using announcements versus posts with your parents right now.
Well, I was scrolling through my homepage in preparation for today, and every single teacher has in the announcements all of our class photos are due tomorrow. So everybody has that posted for the week that class photos are due Friday. Remember, it's really something that is not immediate, that's still important, that you want to keep fresh in their minds when they open it up and see it. Updates are just things that happen daily in the class, cool stuff that we learned, photos, that kind of stuff. So those are more day-to-day, where announcements are, because you can schedule them out and stay there, is something that's generally more important.
Yeah, that's. Like I said, that's I think that's a great way to just, as you said too, to just keep people informed of, hey, this big event that's coming up in the next week. Now, if we have something that's very time sensitive, this is a nice segue. We can do an alert. And Melissa, are you using alerts on a regular basis, or do you reserve that for more of a very urgent matter?
We reserve alerts for emergencies. It will automatically send out, if they have the app on their phones, it will reach them in real time through their phones as well as an email. We've used it, last year we used it 3 times for power outages when the school had to close within 30 minutes. We didn't have any snow, so we didn't have to close for snow. But that's the kind of stuff that we would use it for.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think that's because I know anytime I get a different sounding alarm on my phone, I get a little bit apprehensive or a little bit nervous. And we have a question in here from Teresa that, Melissa, I'd love to have you jump in on it. I'm not sure if you can see it or not. Are you limited to the number of groups or numbers in a group?
Nope, you can have as many groups as you need and as many people as you want. You can invite as many people as you need to.
Now, and I'm going to put you on the spot again. How many? At what have you found that it becomes a number where it becomes almost unmanageable, and you decide to? Have you ever split a group? You know, let's say you can see here I have a PTA group. You know, if you had to split any of those groups into subgroups to keep it manageable?
We haven't run into that. We don't have a PTA group, so we don't have but our school is 300 and something parent people that we have on Bloomz, and we haven't had to split up anything.
Okay, that's a substantial number of users. Yeah, coming from the high school background, I'm used to thousands in a school. So I can see, you know, as a teacher, you know, it wouldn't be too terribly difficult to add an additional group if I needed to split something out. So just so that folks know what an alert will do, you can see we even get this little warning message, and I'm going to continue anyway, and I'll just say, you know, just a test alert. And if anyone in the group has accepted this invitation, you're going to get this right now. This is just a test. And it's going to go out immediately. And we can take a look at it in my inbox here. Laura, that is a great point. Yeah, Google Classroom, the problem with Google Classroom is that you can't really add parents to it. With Bloomz, you obviously add parents to it. And my inbox is loading very slowly right now. There we go. And there's my test alert that just it just popped up. And as you can see, we can go directly to view this post or like this post, just like in Facebook, you can like a post. Very similar in that regard, which is, I think, something that makes it easy for parents to understand how to use and how to scroll through. All right, so let's take a look at some of the other features here. Here in the calendar, we can set up things that are going to happen in the calendar that are just going to be viewable events. So let's say later tonight we're going to have a PTA meeting, and we'll say it's in the cafeteria at the school. And then in my notes here, I'm going to put in a reminder that says, if you are a PTA member, you will also get this notice from the PTA group. So I'm kind of doing a double reminder here. And this event's going to happen. We'll have that happen at 8:30 tonight.
Richard, can I have you show something real quick on there?
Yeah, go ahead.
Will you go up to that little turquoise event above your face?
Yep.
And click on that. That's going to give you a bunch of different event types that you can schedule if you want.
Yep. Yeah, so when we were talking earlier about the idea of the pickup drop-off or the carpool organization, we have those sorts of things, field trips, play dates. I love play dates. I'll use that with my dogs. So let's go ahead. Oh, I forgot to save that. I forgot to save that before I posted it. Let's pick my event type. All right, and we'll just call it the event, and we'll say PTA meeting. Again, in the cafeteria. And reminders are also sent to PTA members. So you can see I'm sending this out to my parents who are in my world history class, but I also have a group down here called PTA that we're going to look at in just a minute as well. And Laura has a good question there about team teaching. And as soon as I post this event, I'm going to ask Melissa to address that question as well. All right. Let's go ahead and save that. All right, so Melissa, you want to go ahead and can you address that question regarding team teaching?
Team teaching in the same classroom, or team teaching like all of 4th grade?
I'm not quite sure. That Laura's question was about team teachers. Could you use it if multiple teachers use this? How does that work on the parents' end?
Yeah, so you can have multiple teachers attached to a classroom, and they have the same rights as each other. So you can post, you can schedule, you can ask for volunteers. It would show up from the class. You have a choice when you post. You can choose whether to have it come from yourself as the teacher or just from the classroom. But if you did it as yourself as the teacher, then it would show up from you. So, but both of you would be able to have the same access and to post, interact.
Okay, great. So that I think the concern might be that we would inundate parents with repeat messages accidentally, and I think that might be part of the concern that we're getting in the questions there. Yeah, and just confirm that we don't want to be inundating parents with repeat messages.
Right, and that would be something that you would maybe work out as a team as to who's going to be responsible for posting what.
Right,
would be my suggestion.
Yeah, and I think you could also use the scheduling tool in that regard too. You might, for example, in the high school level, when I was teaching with 3 other teachers on a team, I was in charge of things like overdue assignment reminders that went out, and my colleague Jeremy was in charge of upcoming reminders. So it was just a different way of splitting it out, and we were using an arcane email system at the time. But I think that'd be a a good solution for us. So if we go back into my feed now, you'll see that right here we now have this new PTA meeting, and we're going very chronologically through all of this. Now, my favorite feature of all of this is streamlining the conference scheduling process. There's some other features I like, but this is my absolute favorite. And let's go ahead and create a parent-teacher conference. So parent-teacher conferences for world history, let's choose a date. Do them tomorrow. I'll start at 9 o'clock. It's a Friday, so I'm going to end a little bit early. I'm going to end at about 1:30 tomorrow. And I can build in a break for lunch. Right? Let's do a break from 12 to 12:30. Make it even shorter. 12:23. And I'm going to set up my slots for 15 minutes apiece. And I'm only going to give myself 5 minutes between each meeting. I'm going to put in a little note here that says, please send Mr. Byrne a note if you need to reschedule. If you want to swap time slots, please chat with another parent in the class. Because if you recall, at the beginning, I allowed parents to communicate back and forth with each other. So I'm going to say that if parents want to take control of swapping times, they can certainly do so. And I'm going to set myself with a little alert 5 minutes before. Let's go ahead and set that up. And you can see we have 12 slots all the way through. And every member of the class will now be able to sign up for any of those slots. All right. So another question in there from Anne. Melissa, do you want to go ahead and take that one?
Yep, I was just typing that. Yep, absolutely private. So if you have a staff group or a teacher group, the only people that are ever going to see that communication or event management within that group are the people that are invited to that group. If you wanted to send a private communication to one other staff member or a group of staff members, you would use the message feature.
Okay, great. And here's the question from Diane that I think that she's been waiting patiently for all evening. And that is, she teaches 4 to 6, and the problem I had when I used this was that each class seeing the same schedule to set up their conferences. So Diane, if I understand the issue you had correctly, you have a couple of different classes that you're trying to schedule parent-teacher conferences for, and you have schedules in different places, and I can see that being a problem too. If I typically taught 4 to 6 sections of a course, and we had parent-teacher conference days on the same 2 days. So I have some overlap there. Melissa, do you have a proposed solution for that?
Yep, the only way that you can link multiple classes, like if you wanted to have history and your world history class together and create a conference schedule for that, that's what I'm hearing, yes?
Yes, that's exactly the problem.
Great. So in order to do that, you would have a school umbrella account. So the school account is the only way that you can link multiple classes.
Okay, great. And do you have that on your screen that we could share?
Yeah.
Great.
Can you share?
Yep. So let me just make you the presenter here very quickly on my list of names. And you are going to see a notification on your screen.
Okay.
And you should be able to share your screen. You should see a button that says share your screen.
Yep, I clicked on it. Can you guys see it?
Not yet. Now we can. Or now we've got.
Okay. So this is our staff group, but let me scroll up. So I have 2 school communities that use this account. Montessori Children's House is my school, and then my son, who's in 5th grade, his aftercare school program also uses it. So here is our school account, and the school account looks exactly the same as your classroom account. The only difference is up here there are classes. So under here you'll find all of the classes that are attached to that school account. So if I wanted to schedule a conference and I want to attach 2 different classrooms, I would go to Parent-Teacher Conference. And for sake of time, I'm just going to add a date and keep going. Since Richard already showed us how to do this, click Next. There are my slots. Now, here's where I can invite the whole classroom, or I can invite individual parents. But I can also, you know what? I need to do this from the school. Never mind. This is the problem. If I go into the school account and create a parent-teacher conference, then I can link any classes.
Gotcha. I see.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Right. So from the school account, you can send this out to every parent who is a member of the school, correct?
Yes.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah, that I think that would solve part of the problem. Only issue being if we have 5,000 kids in the school, we might have a lot of appointment slots to schedule. But we can certainly make what I would propose in that case is to make subdivisions and say all grade 9 students or all grade 10 students or all grade 4 students or something to that effect. That we might be able to work with as well. Great. So I'm going to switch the screen back here to mine. All right. Awesome. Thank you, Melissa. All right. And so we should all be seeing my screen again. Now, let's go back into my event details and back into my home. And you can see I'm in my home and I have everything. This is all of my classes. This is also kind of useful as a teacher who has multiple courses. I'll be able to see updates and notifications from all of my classes in this one stream, or I can go and say just my world history class. No. What we also have in the upper right hand corner here, and this is part of the posting assignment reminders, both public and private. So if I want to send a more private reminder, let's say I'm going to send it to someone in my contacts. Okay, so we'll send it just to Richard. Okay. Or we can send it just to one person, 1 or 2 people in my contacts, and say, just a quick reminder that your student has an overdue library book. If you can get that back soon, we would appreciate it. And so this is a nice way to send out those individual reminders. This is something that not everyone in the class needs to see. I can send it to just a couple of people in my contacts. And of course, we can have a reply back from those people who have received those messages as well. Okay. So I like that aspect of it. If I can go from very quickly, I can go from whole class to just one member of the class. Now, down here in the bottom left side of my screen, we have groups, and I alluded to this earlier. I have a group called PTA. So I've just set up my PTA group. I also have a field trip chaperones group. Let's say I have a field trip coming up, and I'm going to have, and this is perfect for someone who teaches multiple classes, but they're all going on the field trip together. For example, when I would take kids to Boston on a field trip, I'd have kids from all the sections of a course that I taught all going together. So it didn't make sense to send out messages on a class-by-class basis. I'll send it out to everybody at once. Okay, so here in my field trip chaperones group, and again, we can do the exact same thing we did before. We can edit the cover photo, and if I have something in my albums, I can pull that up, or I can just go in and upload a picture. Once you've seen that done once, you can do it 100 times. There we go. Our field trip is going to be to the big truck that's going to load here in this picture. Yep. And we'll post this quick little volunteer help. Right? So we need volunteers for field trip to Boston. Location, meet at school at 7 a.m. It's going to be an all-day event on the 20th. We're not going to repeat. And let's go ahead and invite people. That's one of my contacts. We can say, pull that person in. Or we can say all members. I only have one member right now. We'll go ahead and send that out. Now, if we go back to our members, we can see, well, we need to add some more members. Let's invite, again, anybody who has an email address. We can add Melissa right now. And she's not going to be a field trip. Laura, yeah, this is completely free right now. Yep, all this is free. That works out really well. So I'm going to put Melissa on the spot again. Melissa, how are you using groups within your school at this point?
We have like I said, we have a staff group. So we have all of our in-services, meetings, any sort of educational enrichment events that come to the school scheduled on there. All the events have a reminder built in that you can select, so it reminds the teachers that something's coming up, because we're all busy and forget that every other week is our curriculum meeting. And then we have a kindergartners specific group. And those are the only groups that we use, that we need for right now. But it's really limitless as to what groups you want to have.
Right. And the process of creating a group is just like creating a class. I just go and hit add join. We can join an existing group or create a new one from scratch here. And we'll just call this one, as is suggested there, carpooling. And we'll say for parents who want to coordinate rides. And again, we're going to let parents communicate back and forth in here so they can chat with each other and organize their rides. Let's go back to my home. Let's go back to my home and let's just take a look at a couple of the other features here for managing our communications. So you'll notice that my calendar has now lit up. I had those red dots there indicating that I had some alerts and some things happening. My PTA meeting starting in 10 minutes. Okay. Here in my calendar. Now, as we go through my calendar, this is my calendar here for me as the teacher, or in this case, Max Byrne as the teacher. This is my calendar here of all the things that I have going on in my Bloomz account. The calendar here for the world history class is different. That's the calendar that parents will see when they log into Bloomz. And they're going to see just this. They're not going to see everything else that I have from all of my other calendar pieces. That's just a slight difference in how those two things work. And we can see there that Teresa has liked the previous alert message. So, again, just like in Facebook, you can like these events. Now, one of the other things I like about Bloomz is that it does take the place of, doesn't entirely take the place of blogging, but it does a lot of what a blog can do. If you're looking to just share updates with parents about cool things that have happened in class, just hit the photos option. Okay? And you can see all the photos that are there, and let's go ahead and post a photo or create an entire album of photos from a school event, a field trip, a school play, or something to that effect. And you can add them to your heart's content. I see a lot of schools now starting to use Instagram for things like this, but the problem with Instagram is that you have to get parents to follow you on Instagram, and not everybody has Instagram. As Melissa pointed out, if you have sent out email invitations to Bloomz to all your students' parents, chances are very good they're going to be into the correct class. They're going to be in Bloomz. They're going to see these updates you send out, fun little updates. Now, just the legal side of me says make sure that when you're posting picture updates that you do have permission from parents to post the pictures of their students' faces, because we do have parents who will be able to see each other's kids in these channels. Not quite as private, not quite as public as Instagram, but it is still slightly public in that parents can see each other's kids popping up there. And I'm going to ask Melissa if she wants to. Melissa, do you want to weigh in with anything that I've kind of missed, or you want to emphasize more in here?
No, I mean, I use the feed and the day-to-day posting quite a bit. I do photo sharing a lot. I will say that we have some parents that absolutely do not want their children's photos to be up for everybody to see, but every single one of those parents don't have a written exception for Bloomz. So they don't want it on our Facebook page, they don't want it used in marketing, but every single one of them have said that it's okay for us to post their photos on Bloomz, which is cool because that way it makes it a little bit easier for us to manage. And we can share freely the stuff that goes on day to day. There is a translation feature. When you signed up at the beginning, you could choose the language that you want to see. That's only for you. Doesn't mean that your entire class will be in that language. Every user will get to choose that themselves. And then we also have a texting option as well, so that the posts will be sent as a text message option.
Right.
But other than that, you did great.
Thanks. I'm going to ask you just one other thing from your perspective as a teacher in an elementary school. Have you had any parents who have said just absolutely positively, I don't want to install one more app on my phone. I don't want this. Why can't you just call me? Have you had any of those kinds of parents?
I have parents that have absolutely not wanted to sign up for an account for Bloomz, which is fine. Like I said, I've invited everybody through emails, so they're going to get all the communication in an email, which is really how I was doing my communication before I started using Bloomz anyway.
Right.
I will say the only time parents will need to create an account is for the parent-teacher conference signups, because they're going to have to go into Bloomz and sign up for a time. I did have one very adamant parent that was not going to do that, and so I just invited her to come in, you know, on my office hours, and we sat down and we just picked a time, and the teacher can plug in people as they can. So we found a time that worked for her, and I signed her up for that time. But for the most part, we've had, and I piloted this program in my classroom. The person that developed it was a parent in my class. He came to me and told me to use it, and I was really frustrated because I didn't want one more thing that was going to take up my time. And I started using it, and within short order realized just the amazing things that it can do and the amount of time that it has saved me personally. So yeah.
That's great. That's great. And one last thing that I need to point out to everyone is when we do have parents who are commenting or liking, that we can moderate that. So if there is a parent who writes a comment accidentally thinking that they're sending you a private message, and this happens with everything, right? We see this on Facebook, even with people who have been using Facebook for years. They think they're sending you a private message and they accidentally post something publicly. You can moderate it. You can take that out. So it's not like it's not permanent up there. If a parent says, "Hey, I really need to talk to you about my student's peanut allergy," or something to that effect, and if it's make it private, you can moderate it out just so that you know that that's a feature there. And just to reiterate, yes, Bloomz is completely free to use. You can go and sign up right now. As you saw, I now have 2 accounts because I signed up a second time this evening to demonstrate how to use it from the get-go. And I will emphasize that the iOS and the Android app do all the same functions that I displayed here in my web browser tonight. I just demonstrated from the web browser tonight for the sake of preserving bandwidth and making it a little bit smoother in a webinar setting. But I encourage you to take a look at the mobile apps as well. So Melissa, thanks again for joining us and sharing your screen with us and sharing your expertise with us. It's always great to have someone who's using it on a daily basis join the session. And if anyone has questions that they need answered, feel free to send an email to the Bloomz support. They have tons of documentation on how to get started. You can go or you can go on YouTube and you can find videos there as well. And of course, anyone who has signed up for the webinar tonight will be able to access a recording of tonight's webinar. So if you want to play it back, share it with your friends, please do so. So thanks everyone. Have a fantastic evening, and I hope Bloomz helps you streamline a bunch of your communication with parents. Have a great evening and a great weekend.